All right, a little instant reaction as the Niners hold on to beat the Seahawks on Thursday Night Football. It looked a lot like all these 49er wins this year, right? An unblockable defensive line, take a lead somewhere first half, and then kind of grind it out. Christian McCaffrey carries, eat the clock. So let's talk a little about Brock Purdy. The offense is pretty much the same, with the exception they can move the pocket more because of Brock Purdy's feet. If you look at San Francisco, half the league is undrafted. So just take the Niners as you look at Brock Purdy being the final player taken in the 7th round. Well, 2 of his targets, George Kittle, was drafted in the 5th round out of Iowa. George Kittle was a late bloomer. Do you realize he only had 48 catches total at Iowa? He didn't have 800 yards receiving at Iowa, a program that puts out a lot of talented tight ends. Juwan Jennings, a wide receiver for the Niners. He was a 7th round pick. So, there's so many good skill players now. So many guys can catch the ball, run. The NFL is furnished about 25 good receivers a year out of college football. So it's not shocking. Again, Ryan Fitzpatrick was a 7th round quarterback and threw for 35,000 yards and is now on the Amazon broadcast. So, and it's interesting if you look at Brock Purdy. So he went to high school in Arizona. He ended up being the Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Arizona. So, if you're a Gatorade Player of the Year in the state I grew up in, Washington State, you usually end up going and starting and being a star at college. And oftentimes, Brock Heward's a prime example. You go play in the NFL. He was in Puyallup High School. He's now at Fox, former Husky and Colt quarterback. So Brock Purdy was the Gatorade Player of the Year. That's his final year in Arizona. But he started as a sophomore in high school in a really tough division. And then he goes to Iowa State, and he ends up playing 7 or 8 games as a freshman. And here he is as a rookie playing. So what do we get? High school, college, and pro. Brock Purdy is a guy that steps right in with a lot of confidence, self-awareness. He obviously is a bright kid. He learns the playbook quickly. So, he starts as a sophomore in high school, a freshman in college, and now a rookie in the NFL. And remember, they were very comfortable when Trey Lance got hurt and they moved Garoppolo in. They were very comfortable Brock Purdy being the number 2. There was no doubt about it. He'd played in the preseason and they liked him. So it's just, I think sometimes you look at the final round, the 7th round in the NFL, and there's players everywhere in this league. And so why didn't, Brock Purdy get drafted higher? He's not huge. He's about 6'1", 215, 6'1", 6'1 and a half. That's on the small side for a pocket quarterback. Also played in the Big 12, where a lot of quarterbacks have failed. And, you get run and shoot scores. You get, 54, 45 in the conference. So there's a lot of offense. And therefore in the NFL, there's a little bit, before Patrick Mahomes and that run of Heisman winners at Oklahoma, there was a real feel, Big 12 football quarterbacks were, busts, high scoring, no defense in the conference. But, don't look, Sage Rosenfels is a former NFL quarterback who played at Iowa State. Brock Purdy was a really, really, really strong college quarterback. I mean, think about this. He was all Big 12 in that wild conference where there's a lot of points. He was all Big 12 twice, and then he was second team all Big 12 as a sophomore. So this is the Gatorade Player of the Year in Arizona, 2-time, actually a 3-time first or second team all-conference college guy who Alabama had in for a visit. It's a really talented guy. But, little on the small side from a conference that scores a lot of points, maybe some cynicism, and also he can be a little streaky. I went and looked at his scouting profile from Lance Zierlein, a guy I respect, whose dad was a coach in the NFL for years, and he's a sportscaster in Houston and does some stuff for, I think, the NFL Network. And that was the knock on Brock Purdy. He could be a little bit streaky. He can get out of rhythm, a little squirrely, but high completion percentage. I'm not shocked by it. When I watched him in the preseason, I thought, it's pretty good. I'll say it again. He's Taylor Heineke, but more accurate. And Taylor Heineke is winning games for the Washington Commanders. We also have a culture now where there's just more quarterbacks who can play. High school, college, and pro. This is not 1998. It's not 2008. The game now is absolutely offensive. You can go to a high school football game where I live in Southern California. You got teams throwing it 45 times a game, right in these big leagues. So good for Brock Purdy. And I think the Niners feel like, to me, a team very capable, maybe the only other team in the NFC, very capable of going to Philadelphia and playing the Eagles and sitting in the center of the ring and exchanging blows. I think they're that good. And I think they're basically more athletic than they were with Jimmy Garoppolo. Let's talk about the Seahawks. Regression to the mean. Whenever I get too hot with my blazing 5 picks, I'll eventually go 1 for 4. I think Geno Smith, Seattle has 2 first-round picks. They have Denver's. So right now it's the second or the third pick. I think it's the third. You're going to take a quarterback. Bryce Young is probably not available. Houston, with the number 1 pick, will probably take Bryce Young. So you can take C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State. I don't know. I've seen them lose twice to Michigan. I don't know. Or Will Levis from Kentucky, who got a real arm. Sean Payton told me, of all the quarterbacks, he thought he was really, really interesting. Will Levis. So, his college stats don't blow you away, but kid that can really spin it. And, Seattle's got a few other needs: interior defensive line, interior offensive line. I still think they need another receiver, another back behind Kenneth Walker, a few more bigs on the defensive front. But, Seattle, Geno Smith is, as we've talked about Tua, Geno Smith, there was no real history as a guy who's a bust and then goes on to be a Pro Bowl quarterback. That kind of stuff just doesn't happen in the NFL. And so now we're post-Thanksgiving, weather's colder, guys get banged up, people have more film, and you're kind of getting on Geno Smith what you think. He's a big guy he's got a good arm. He really does. He has a really, really nice arm. You can certainly win games with him. But we all know when you start looking at Vegas odds, who's going to win the Super Bowl, it's the same thing with Tua. Now it gets cold. Now it gets windy. Now you don't have all your receivers. Now your left tackle is out. That's when Joe Burrow wins and Mahomes wins and Herbert wins. And Tua and Geno Smith, things level out. I think the one thing I will say about Seattle is that, Pete Carroll, I often refer to him as, like he's a 70-year-old head coach. His energy is like nothing I've ever seen. I mean, he's just unique. I don't know really how to explain Pete Carroll. He wears that gum out. He's got a lot of power in that organization. I don't see him going anywhere. And I think Seattle's going to be too good for the next several years, too competitive. They're not going to get in the top 5 at quarterback again. So even if they need interior defensive linemen, this draft has a lot in the top 10, top 12, they're going to have to take a quarterback. They're not going to be in that top 2-3 spot again. And so my guess, it's going to be Will Levis or C.J. Stroud for Seattle. I would take Levis from Kentucky. Just would. So the 49ers hold on to beat the Seahawks. Another instant reaction. Back tomorrow on iHeartRadio and FS1. San Francisco. If Brock Purdy hoists the Lombardi Trophy, I know it sounds ridiculous, but doesn't this kind of sound ridiculous? Think about this. Jalen Hurts, who basically had to leave Alabama because the greatest college football coach of all time, Nick Saban, said, yeah, it's not working here. Goes to Oklahoma, second in the Heisman, second round pick for Philadelphia. They've already got, like Carson Wentz. And all of a sudden, not long after that, Jalen Hurts, who had to transfer in college, who we thought was a runner over a thrower, is starting for the Eagles, gets them to the playoffs in year 2, and then in year 3 is up for MVP. That sounds totally improbable. So that's who Brock Purdy could eventually be playing in Philadelphia. So we just live in a different time. There is more good quarterback play. Guys come different sizes, different skill sets. I mean, you look at Brock Purdy. He had a longer college career than Jalen Hurts. He didn't have to transfer. And, Jalen Hurts is a crazy story. Outside of Josh Allen, I don't think there's a quarterback in this league that's improved more from year 2 to year 3 than Jalen Hurts. His story's improbable. Maybe it's the year of the impossible. But I do think Brock Purdy meets Jalen Hurts in the NFC Championship in Philadelphia. And I think it's a go either way game. Did you see Seattle's offensive line pretty good? Try to block the Niners tonight? Talk about disruptive. It'll probably be a low-scoring, highly physical, wild game. Deebo Samuel back by that time. That's a 2017 game either way. Jalen Hurts and Brock Purdy. Rex Grossman made a Super Bowl. Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. Brad Johnson won a Super Bowl. Stan Humphries for the Chargers got to a Super Bowl. Don't count it out. Another instant reaction.